Now, finally, I had the time to devote to my big book. My closest friend and confidant, the botanist Joseph Hooker, urged me to publish, and so I set to the task. But then, in June of 1858, a most unforeseen event occurred. I received a package in the mail from Indonesia. Inside was a manuscript by a young biologist, Alfred Wallace. Mr. Wallace informed me that he respected my opinion and asked my advice of his ideas. I read his paper in near disbelief. In his short essay entitled "On the Tendency of Varieties to Depart Indefinitely from an Original Type," he described a theory of natural selection nearly identical to my own. His short essay was an abstract of my big book. The terms he used could easily have stood for my chapter headings. As an honorable man, I felt obliged to forward his paper on to the proper authorities so that he would receive the recognition due him. I was at a loss for what to do and turned to my friends Hooker and Lyell for advice. It was they who recommended that my unpublished paper, written in 1844, and Wallace's essay be publicly read together at the next meeting of the London Linnean Society. The reading caused little stir. But now I felt a sense of great urgency. I worked on my book at every opportunity during a time of hardship and ill health. An epidemic of scarlet fever broke out in Down Village, and we lost our little Charles. I lost entire days through terrible fits of vomiting and could barely write for more than 20 minutes at a time without intense stomach pain. In September of 1859, I corrected the final page proofs of the book. And in November, The Origin of Species was finally published. It is the chief work of my life. Soon, I received a multitude of letters. I received wonderful letters of support from Hooker, the American botanist Asa Gray, and the zoologist Thomas Huxley, who was to become one of my most loyal friends and most active supporters. Huxley warned me of the considerable abuse and misrepresentation bound to come my way. His premonitions came to pass. I received hateful and fearful letters. Some called me the most dangerous man in Europe. I was vilified by the press and from pulpits throughout the country. Two of the most vicious, mean-spirited, and distorted reviews of my book were written by two of my oldest friends, the geologist Adam Sedgwick, and the anatomist Richard Owen. I received most of the credit and the criticism. But the ideas are not mine alone, of course. In addition to Wallace, there was my grandfather, Erasmus, and his book, Zoonomia, the French biologist Lamarck, and the great French naturalist Buffon. Indeed, Samuel Butler wrote, Buffon planted, Erasmus Darwin and Lamarck watered, but it was Mr. Darwin who said, the fruit is ripe, and shook it into our laps. Have you read my book? Have any of you read my book? If you read my book, and if you have not, I hope someday you will note that I do not use the term evolution, but speak instead of descent with modification. This was deliberate on my part, for the term evolution had been used by others earlier, and in the vernacular of the times was firmly tied to a concept of progress. To my way of thinking, this was a fallacious idea. Species may change over time, and new species arise as they diverge from common ancestral stock and adapt to this planet's ever-changing conditions. But they do not progress towards some more improved or superior form, or accede to some state of greater nobility or perfection. There is as much to marvel and delight in as a sessile barnacle, a legless lizard, a blind cavefish, or a primate that stands erect and contemplates the stars. In June of 1860, the origin was publicly debated at the British Association meeting at Oxford. I was too ill to attend. It is providential that I was absent, given the nature of the attacks on me and my ideas by Richard Owen, Fitzroy, and the Bishop, Samuel Wilberforce. I don't think I could have borne to confront the bishop, or the sight of Fitzroy holding his Bible aloft and yelling, "The book, the book." Sadly, years later, Fitzroy was dead by his own hand. What a mixed character of a man. Saddened as I was by the attacks against me, I was immensely cheered when I heard the news that Hooker and Huxley had so ably defended my views at the debate. What a scene it was. The meeting room was packed to suffocation with over 700 people. On the platform sat my good friend, Professor Henslow, who chaired the meeting. The clergy, who shouted lustily for Wilberforce, were in the middle of the room, and behind them a cluster of undergraduates.